With so much to play for, nothing seemed to go right for the Illini in their home finale senior day against Purdue as they lose 31-24. Joined by Robert Rosenthal from IlliniBoard.com now for the Sunday No Huddle. Robert, we'll get your initial thoughts. They fall to 7-3 with a loss, no longer in the driver's seat in the Big Ten West. And like I said, penalties seem to be the big issue, just nothing going right.
Yeah, it's certainly, it's a big deflation from where things had been 2 weeks ago. It reminds me of the let's see, what year would it be? 1990 season. Illinois starts out hot, gets to November, ranked in the driver's seat for the Rose Bowl. Iowa coming to town, we talked about this 2 weeks ago, and they lose that game to, Illinois fans refer to as the Nick Bell game. The Iowa running back had more than 200 yards. Then they lose the next week to Michigan, and all these hopes and dreams fall flat. They had been as high as ranked 5th, and it all kind of fell apart there in November. And this feels like the same thing. You start 7-1, and you start thinking about Big Ten title games and, these dream scenarios of what if they did beat Michigan or Ohio State or whatever. That's all gone now. You go back to, okay, it's 7-3. Let's reset here and see what's left in these last 3 games.
What have you seen on the field these past 2 weeks? If we do a little bit of analysis of the games, Michigan State, Purdue, first time this season that they've lost back-to-back games. If we compare that to that stretch of, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Iowa, those games, it just doesn't seem like the same team. And there's just maybe, Tariq Barnes even said they had pressure on themselves coming into this game. And it almost seemed like you could see that.
Yeah, the obvious thing is you look at the 31 on the scoreboard.
Yeah.
We were talking 3-4 weeks ago of like, is any team going to get to 20 on this Illinois defense and such? So giving up those big plays has been the thing. There's a lot of talk about that. The interception that Devin Witherspoon had that was called back for a pass interference on him. So it's still Purdue ball, and the very next play they strike for a touchdown. And those are the play. That touchdown, that's the play that wasn't give up. The big third down conversions that Purdue got, those were the plays that weren't given up, in the first 7-8 games of the season and showed up again. So, in a sense, it's kind of like the Indiana game. Those big stops that had happened week after week after week, suddenly they were gone again.
Yeah, and football is such a momentum game. I don't think that, Illinois has completely fallen off the map or anything like that. It's not like the sky is falling. If these two games weren't back-to-back, they just were placed in different parts of the season. It's still a really good year, 7-3 at this point. But football momentum, it's just the way that it works sometimes where you rely on the defense so much. Some of those plays you were avoiding early in the season, now you can't seem to avoid them.
Yeah, it's one of those. Yeah, say this season was played differently, and Illinois got to the Northwestern game at 5-6 with a chance to go to a bowl. Given the preseason expectations, 5-6 going into Northwestern would have been a dream scenario. A chance against a bad Northwestern team to go to a bowl game. Now you flip it around, and 7-3 feels disappointing at this point because of. That's what I wrote about in my post-game article of like the stakes got higher. The stakes got as high as they've been in a long time. This was a real game with massive implications for a ranked Illinois team. The last 2 weeks, and both of them failed. So it's a reset. It's a step back, and it's okay. Reevaluate. 2 games left. What can you do at Michigan?
Yeah, and now you could even say or hope that without maybe that kind of pressure, Illinois can play maybe more free going up there to a really good Michigan team. And maybe that's a nice recycling of sorts, that they don't have that pressure of controlling their own destiny and can just go and play a really good Wolverine team.
Yeah, the biggest concern I would say right now is some of the injuries. Is Taz Nicholson out for the year? That was maybe the biggest, maybe glaring thing yesterday when you thought about it. Is okay, Taz Nicholson goes out, something with his wrist or something, and he's had the concussion issues and such. The backup Terrell Jennings was out, so it was the 4th stringer Strain who was in there. Tyler Strain gets the pick. He gets an interception. That's great for your 4th corner, but then he goes out. So now they moved a safety, kind of the Quan Martin star position guy, Xavier Scott. He moves he's the 5th corner. And we've talked about it most of the season. This is a game being played by a thin Illinois team, but the first string is really good. When you're down to your fifth cornerback, now you're playing a true freshman, and now, so things start to lower a little, and things start to get away from you a little, and it's just, if the depth isn't there, that's why some of these teams that are in the top 10 are there in November, because they're down to their third middle linebacker, but he's still a junior with a lot of experience who's played, the programs are strong, everything else. So that's probably the concern in these last two games is, okay, as a few of these injuries start to pile up and Illinois is down to its fifth cornerback, okay, what does that mean for how they're going to, scheme against Michigan and Northwestern?
Have you poured over all of the chances and the odds as far as who wins the messy Big Ten West now?
I saw the chart that went around Twitter today. I just glanced at it to see what the fan in me can't handle that chart yet. The fan in me sees that chart and can only think 2 home wins and this chart goes away, and it would have been clinched by now. 2 home wins in a game where you're favored by 17 and you're favored by 7. You just take care of business in those 2 games, and there's no need for this chart. So that's a painful chart for me right now. I'll get there eventually and say, hey, knock off Michigan and everything changes. That'll come as the week goes. But today is one of those, I don't even want to acknowledge college football exists.
Well, it has Illinois about at a 13% chance to still win the division. If we look back at this season as a whole, like I said earlier, it's so tough having these games back to back, where if they were sprinkled into the season, being 7-3 with 2 games to go would be such a win for this program right now. When you look back and consider it all, being in year 2 of Brett Bielema and having a team that performs like this, I mean, your reaction today, knowing everything that we do over the last 2 games, is still what?
I think I said it last week that 7 wins was my line for this season. You get the winning season that you haven't had. Once you get to 7, everything else is gravy. So once I get all this out of my head and I can sort it out, I'll see this as, look, they're at 7 wins on a team that was supposed to win, according to Vegas, 4.5 wins was the over. So if you bet, if you're a gambling person, you cashed your ticket a month ago. Mm-hmm. So there's still, big picture, it's still rosy. Focus in on the opportunity that was here and the opportunity that doesn't come along in Champaign very often, and how that opportunity went away. That's still going to sting for a while.
Does that give you hope, though, from what the progression from year 1 to year 2? There's still one more year with divisions, and we know how good Brett Bielema, it turns out, is at coaching in the Big Ten West. How do you think they can use just this year as a sounding board?
100%. It's a positive, and it's moving the program forward. I would compare it to what was done in 1990 by John Makovic. Look, they got to number 5 and they only finished 8-4, and when they were number 5 in the country, there were thoughts of, hey, you already knocked off Colorado. This could be you could be playing for a title if you get to the Rose Bowl and all that. All that went away, and you were still like, wait, this is a great coaching staff. They still got them to 8-4 after Jeff George left. Keep Makovic here forever. He only lasted 1 more year and went to Texas. And it's the same feeling now. The fans believe in the staff. They did get them to 7-3. These are 2 disappointing games, but the trajectory of the program, look, when was the last 7-win regular season? 15 years ago. So to be there in year 2, the overall picture is really strong.
As we look at the final 3 guaranteed games, like I said, still the chance. Some things need to happen outside of their control for that Big Ten championship game, but 2 regular season and the bowl game as well. What would be success and positive momentum moving forward from those games into next year in the offseason?
An 8-win regular season, getting that, even if you lose to Michigan, beating Northwestern, getting that trophy, keeping it in Champaign for 2 years in a row. And it looks like Northwestern's going to be 1-10 going into that game. So winning that game and keeping that momentum would be huge. If it's 7-5 and that means 4 losses in November, that's a bit of a rough kind of thing to sell in the future. 8-4 looks great. So it's 1 more win to get to that. Wow, this was a really excellent season, and then go have some fun in the bowl game and let the fans travel and see what can happen in bowl season and really sell that into recruiting into next year.
Do you have a preference on the bowl game?
I want to go somewhere warm. I've wanted to be at one of the Florida Bowls. Illinois hasn't been in one of the Florida Bowls since 1990. I would love to go back down somewhere warm, especially after sitting in the stands yesterday. So warmth is the key. I would, maybe it might not be Citrus Bowl at this point, but that it used to be the Outback Bowl, now called the ReliaQuest Bowl. That's kind of the target. That New Year's Day, I guess it's played on January 2nd this year because of an NFL Sunday. But get to that January 2nd New Year's Bowl, and that's that would be great.
I've kind of circled maybe the Mayo Bowl in Charlotte as kind of a fun one. Last year with Shane Beamer pulling off the stunt, getting the Mayo dumped on him. Do we think Brett Bielema would be down for that if they made that bowl?
I think he would go for that. Another great bowl would be the Music City Bowl.
That's right.
Fans could travel to Nashville. It's not that far of a drive. You're in Nashville, New Year's Eve bowl game. That would be pretty fun. So, yeah, there's still fun things ahead. Once we get out from under all these clouds.
I was going to say, I hope that this conversation brightens the day maybe a little bit for some Illini fans after the unfortunate past 2 weeks. There are still fun things to look forward to, I think, is the biggest thing.
Yes.
And, could possibly even a fun game against Michigan. Illinois 2-0 on the road against ranked teams with Brett Bielema on the sideline. We're not going to count Iowa. He wasn't on the sideline.
And let's remember that Michigan is fully focused now on Ohio State. There's this, Illinois lost to Michigan State and they lost to Purdue. That's not the concern anymore. Let's get ready for Ohio State. It's the game of the century once again, that type of thing. So this is a place for the Illinois defense, still solid, to maybe sneak in there and make some noise.
Still all one-score games as far as the losses this year, so it could be an interesting one in Michigan. Robert, I think we'll talk to you after that one. Hopefully a fun one to talk about, and I know it's going to be cold,
yes.
But if it's going to be cold, give me some flurries, I think, in Michigan.
I would love it. A November game in the Big House with flurries would be great. Look, all of my friends are going to be in Vegas, in the sun, in the pool, going to the 2 basketball games. I'm going to be in Ann Arbor. Yes, I'd love a few flurries in the air, and some echoes of the 1993 game would be great.
Oh, it gives me chills just thinking about that. He's Robert from IlliniBoard.com. Robert, we'll talk again next week.
Thanks.